that Germany has now given the official go-ahead for deliveries of its Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. Germany, remember, has been under pressure over the last few weeks to send its tanks and also to allow other NATO allies in Europe who have its Leopard tanks for them to be transferred to Ukraine. Now, it is expected that this transfer of Leopard 2 tanks to the Ukrainian front line will actually help the Ukrainians in the spring offensive. Many experts also believe that the spring offensive could potentially prove to be a crucial moment in this war. The German government that's been led by Olaf Scholz has stalled the recent decision, fearing that the move could actually prompt Russia to escalate further. The Germany's move will also pave the way for other countries such as Poland, Spain and Norway to send in their advanced weapons, including their tanks. Now, the immediate goal will be to form 2 battalions of the Leopard 2 tanks for Ukraine. In the first phase, Germany will provide about 14 Leopard 2 tanks. The plan also includes training of Ukrainian troops in Germany and providing logistics and ammunition. And after this, Germany will issue the appropriate transfer permits to partner nations. Now, both Russia and Ukraine are believed to be planning fresh offensives. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Russia is intensifying its push towards Bakhmut, while Ukraine has pleaded for months for Western tanks to be rolled in, as it says that this will give its forces the firepower and also the mobility that is needed to break through the Russian defense lines and to recapture the territory that Russia has in fact captured from Ukraine since the beginning of this war. United Kingdom and Poland have also welcomed Germany's green signal for sending its tanks. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has tweeted to say that the Leopard 2 tanks will strengthen Ukraine's defensive power, alongside Britain's Challenger 2 tanks.
Liz Truss for her dedicated public service to the country. She has led...
To give us more insights in terms of what this transfer by the Germans of its Leopard 2 tanks in fact means for the war in Ukraine, we're being joined by Sergei Solomny, who's the director of the European Resilience Initiative Centre. He's joining us live from Berlin. Mr. Thank you very much indeed for taking time out and speaking to us. The first question that I want to ask you is this. Now, for several weeks, Germany had been extremely reluctant to send its Leopard tanks to Ukrainian battlefield. It had in fact said that it made the transfer of its Leopard 2 tanks conditional on the Americans sending their M1 Abram tanks. What do you think has changed that Germany has now agreed to send its tanks to the battle lines?
Yeah, hello, and thank you for having invited me today. We have seen a lot of pressure on the German government since the last weeks, and it was pressure from different sides. We have seen that the Polish government announced that they will deliver Polish-owned, Germany-produced Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine with the German permission or without it. That was the number one pressure, because Germany didn't want, and in particular German Chancellor Scholz, didn't want to be humiliated by the European allies if they sent the tanks to Ukraine without German permission. Then we have seen the visit of the US Minister of Defense to Secretary of Defense to Berlin, and we know that the discussion in the Chancellor's office was very intense and the situation escalated. So
right.
The defense minister had to shout at the German minister during that meeting. And finally, we have seen a lot of pressure within the German ruling coalition itself.
Right.
We have seen that both leaders of the Green Party, Robert Habeck, who is the vice chancellor, and Annalena Baerbock, who is the foreign minister, they both said that Germany should not stay on the way of the delivery of the tanks. Right. So the pressure was from the east, from the west, and from within the government. So we have seen now that Chancellor Scholz has finally adopted this decision, and that's a good news.
All right, very interesting. That's good news as you put it. But the question that I want to ask you is, what kind of an impact can about 14-odd Leopard tanks actually have in this battle?
Well, 14 tanks is just a little taste, and it's just an appetizer, if we can say it. We know that overall the delivery will be much bigger. It will not only be the German Leopard tanks that Germany sends with this first delivery. There will be Leopard 2 tanks from other European countries like Poland and the Netherlands and the others. There will be Swedish highly modernized Leopard 2 tanks, which Sweden sends as their own tanks, because it's a highly sophisticated, deeply modernized version of the Leopard 2 tanks. We will see that the US has promised to send a couple of dozens of Abrams tanks. And we will also have the British Challenger 2 tanks on the Ukrainian battlefield. So overall, with the German Marders infantry fighting vehicles, with the American Bradleys infantry fighting vehicles, we will see at least 2 mechanized brigades ready in Ukraine within the next a couple of months. And that is incredible amount of firepower. That is exactly what Ukraine needs to cut through the Russian troops in the south and liberate the territories in the south.
All right, very interesting. Now, the question that I want to ask you is, last year, when Russia invaded into Ukraine, it tried to, in some ways, lay siege on the capital city of Kiev with a 40-mile-long convoy of its own tanks. Now, this siege was broken through by the Ukrainians by the use of their drones. And a lot of people turned around and said that tanks as a weapon of war perhaps are now becoming almost redundant, because drones can now outmaneuver them and can actually travel way faster than these tanks can and can deliver weapons in ways that tanks simply cannot. Do you think, at this point of time, for the Ukrainians to be using these tanks, this is a good enough tactic to try and overcome the challenge that the Russians pose?
Well, there is no ultimate weapon in the modern warfare, no type of weapons, tanks, IFVs, planes, drones, battleships, you name them. None of the types of the weapons can win the war alone. That's why we talk about the combined arms. You need sophisticated, highly balanced combinations of all types of arms, starting from small arms and anti-tank missiles into IFVs, tanks, planes, drones, air defense, everything. If one component fails, your fight will be harder. If several components fail, your fight will be impossible. So now we witness some sort of a stalemate on the battlefield, because both sides cannot totally control the air, so they cannot use drones and planes without the problems. And on the ground, the balance of powers is almost equal. Ukrainians really need a lot of highly modernized tanks to use them as firepower to cover the infantry, to let them break through the Russian lines. And then you can use the adventure of the drones. But you cannot win any war with drones alone.
All right, very interesting there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Sergei Salamny, for joining us and getting us those insights there.
Thank you so much.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.